Grievance debates, as you're well aware, Deputy Speaker, are an opportunity for us to raise issues critical to the people we represent. And today I want to take advantage of the opportunity extended to me as an MP to put forward some balance in an amazingly one-sided debate that's occurring in Sydney right now about Sydney's second airport. And if you're a Western Sydney resident, or an MP for that matter, and you want to outline your concerns on the impact of an airport in Western Sydney, good luck. Because you're given literally no opportunity to air your views. Now, the Daily Telegraph, for example, has taken a particular stand in favour of the Western Sydney Airport, and I've got no issue with that. It's their paper, it's their prerogative, but you should be entitled to expect, as a reader for sure, the other side of the debate. And given the telly is in favour of rough and tumble debate, which I certainly am in favour of, you'd think that you would be able to have both sides canvassed in their paper itself. I mean, if you're Ned Manoon or Chris Brown or David Borgia, you all get a chance to sing from the pro Badgerys Creek song sheet with one eye shut. I have no issue with that, but you don't get much space to argue the other side. And I'm not using a grievance debate to pitch an idea to Editor Paul Whittaker that I become an op-ed writer, though if he wants me to become a cadet journalist, I'd be happy to consider it as long as I'm not reporting to Joe Hildebrand. But I certainly do hope that you get to have some back and forth, as I said, on this issue, because Western Sydney residents do deserve both sides of the debate so they can make an informed decision on a matter that will have significant impact to them, because there are some issues that have to be considered very carefully, and I wanted to outline some in my contribution to the chamber now. First, this will represent a massive investment from both federal and state governments. They'll need to fork out money, particularly for all the infrastructure, because this is not just about rolling out a tarmac in Western Sydney. There will be a phenomenal amount of money required to connect road and rail infrastructure and to integrate it into the existing infrastructure that exists in Western Sydney, in an area where there are 1.5 to 2 million people who grapple every day with congestion, who are trying to get from one side of the city to the other, making sure that they're not forced to then compete with passenger traffic that comes from air onto land, onto surface, and then trying to make the commute into Sydney is a big issue for them. Now, the federal government reckons it's got all this money, which is surprising because every moment you listen to them, they tell you it's not there. In my area, for instance, to put this in perspective, the federal government in December cut $6 million for critical healthcare investment at my local hospital at Mount Druitt, an MRI that we've campaigned long for. We can't get health investment to help detect cancers in local residents, but this government reckons it's going to have the billions of dollars available to spend on this airport. And they, for example, have just announced that they'll fund, or they did announce through the course of the campaign, and then when they got into office, that they'd fund WestConnex. I've got no issue. I think it's good to be able to extend the M4, but the fact of the matter is the money that's been put forward, combined with state money, will be combined with a toll. So they don't have money of themselves to fund this fully. They'll have to co-fund it with a toll that will see tolls reapplied on old roads that have already been paid for. And so we're also told that if the money doesn't exist to fund WestConnex clearly off the government budget without a toll, we'll apparently have funds for an airport, a multi-billion-dollar airport in Sydney's west. New South Wales government. Now, the New South Wales government is embarking on a slow crab walk away from its position of opposition to the airport. You can tell they're being pressured by MPs to now support the airport. We saw that on the weekend. They're being urged to support an airport that Infrastructure New South Wales would not even list as an infrastructure priority, would not list it as a priority in their plans. They've got a whole stack of other things, but apparently the New South Wales government is being urged to fund this. Now, in my area, again, the New South Wales government that will need to fund billions in road and rail links. You can't even go down the road to local railway stations in my area and get the New South Wales government to fund the installation of lifts at a railway station. Called for at Rooty Hill and Doonside. You can't get the money for that, but again, they will somehow find the money to fund the billions of dollars for rail links, the billions of dollars for road links, and this from another government that also cut the cardiac unit doesn't have the money to fund a cardiac unit that existed at Mount Druitt Hospital, is now being shut. We will now get a methadone clinic put in its place in our hospital as a result of the urging of some of the same MPs who are pushing for an airport, and we can't get the money for that, but they can find money for an airport. Now, if you ask Western Sydney residents their infrastructure priorities, they will not tell you that an airport is one of them. They'll want better roads, they want better schools, they want better hospitals, but they won't, after, you can ask them to think about it long enough, they will not come up with it, because if even New South Wales or Infrastructure New South Wales won't fund it, New South Wales, Western Sydney residents certainly won't support it otherwise. Now, we're going to invest all this money because apparently Sydney Airport's full. Sydney Airport recently brought out a master plan that's been disparaged by both the Deputy Prime Minister and other figures as well. This master plan that would help manage growth in coming decades has been disparaged by people who probably have no other experience on air traffic numbers other than maybe they had an experience in getting a delay or having a delay in getting their luggage after a long-haul flight, and then can say Sydney Airport's full. Now, if the money is tight and you can't attend to the basic infrastructure needs of Western Sydney, why are we even contemplating a mammoth investment in a possible Western Sydney airport that will span, probably the best part of a decade, but not look into two things: two government-imposed controls that choke the efficiency of Sydney Airport? Now, we're told economic growth and productivity is being held back by delays and congestion at Sydney Airport, but if that's so, why is there no Productivity Commission review into, for example, the impact of the curfew at Sydney Airport, or, more importantly, the impact on movement caps that are imposed on an hourly basis on Sydney Airport? Now, I certainly know communities around the inner city would be upset with what I'm putting forward, and I respect that. But bear in mind, Western Sydney is being told by the advocates of this new airport that not only should they get a second airport in one of the fastest growing regions in the country, but they've argued that a curfew, which protects inner city residents, should not apply to Badgerys Creek. Now, and the claim is no one lives around the site. Fastest growing region in the country, and Badgerys Creek will sit like an appendage on top of the Southwest Growth Centre that will be home to 300,000 people, and we're being told that that can survive without a curfew, which is just ridiculous. So Western Sydney's been told to live with a 24-hour airport, but no review of the existing curfew arrangement at Sydney Airport, where airlines, if they do breach these curfews, are punished to the tune of $850,000. And what kind of airport will it be? Well, we've got no detail. Coalition candidates actually during the election said there were absolutely no plans for a second airport at Badgerys Creek. Happened from the Prime Minister down, and there were candidates in our area saying that. They said they don't have any plans, but the PM's brought together Liberal MPs to talk about it. They've set up a new committee that's going to now meet with the Prime Minister to talk about an airport that they have absolutely no plans for. And it is outrageous that an airport that has that impact on Western Sydney is only represented by one side of politics and not all sides of politics, and represent the residents of Western Sydney. And finally, if you listen to the advocates of this airport, like the Sydney Business Chamber, who funded a Deloitte study into the impact of the airport, they claim 30,000 jobs will be created, which represents about 30 million movements, or an airport roughly the size of Brisbane in Sydney's west. And recently they've upped that. They've gone from 30,000 to 60,000 jobs will be created by this airport, which would make it an airport as probably big, or if not bigger than Heathrow. And let's put some perspective on this. Sydney Airport creates not 60,000 jobs, 28,000. So there's an airport that's proposed that's about as big as Sydney Airport being put in this region. I think it's important that people have the facts. I think if people, I agree, it shouldn't be a scare campaign. It should be clear. It should be clear-eyed. It should have the facts. People should make their minds up. But we shouldn't have a one-sided debate that disrespects Western Sydney insofar as it is not treating them with the due care that an airport of this size be able to have all those facts in place before a final decision is made. An airport that John Howard said in 2003 did not need to ever be built in Sydney.